Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen, Monday, November 29th, 2021, Moorquait Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. Broadcast live on local cable channel 18, streamed live on town Mashpee website, mashpeema.gov/channel 18. It is 6:30 and we're convening the meeting in open session. Start off with a Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I'd like a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Public comment, any? Thank you. And it's not quite 6:35 yet, so we will do the discussion approval of acceptance of the following registration: Mashpee Cable and Advanced Technology Advisory Board, MCAT, Daniel Riley, member, term expires June 30th, 2023.
Make a motion, we accept the resignation with a letter of appreciation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, Tom?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I think we can go, we can start. Public hearing?
All right. Under Chapter 40 of Section 56, as amended by the Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983, Mashpee Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on whether the town of Mashpee should implement the Classification Act. At said hearing, the Select Board will hear testimony as to what will be the fiscal 22 residential factor, which will determine the share of taxes each classification of property will pay, what will be open space factor, and whether there will be a residential exemption and or small business exemption. So public hearing will be conducted Monday, November 29th, 2021 at 6:35 in the Moorquait Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. You can submit comments and questions via email to bos@mashpeema.gov prior to the date and time.
Thank you, Andrew. So we're going to start off the evening with Jason Stiebel, who is the Director of Assessing. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. We've done this before, so I can answer any questions you might have, but generally speaking, if after having done the revaluation for this year, we find that an average property increase in valuation, and these are from sales from 2020, was about 13%, 12.9%. And we expect more next fiscal year due to the amazing sales that have gone on this year, this calendar year. Even with Proposition 2.5 of raising the levy, has still brought our tax rate down from the 891, I believe it was, 894, down to 801. Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm read my own paper here. 803 is a projected tax rate for property. I'm going into fiscal 22, which we are halfway into now. Assuming no changes, that would be the tax rate for all classes of property. Interestingly, commercial portion of the entire tax base has gone down from, it was just hovering around 9%, and it's gone down to about 8.3% overall. So just thought you'd find that interesting. The items before the board are whether or not to shift the tax rate from residential onto commercial properties, or leave the tax rate the same for both, or to offer a small commercial exemption, which, as I pointed out in previous years, benefits very few people, maybe 50 businesses that might benefit that are owner occupied, small enough. Otherwise, it just benefits the landlords of those buildings. There's also a option to have a open space discount, which of 10%, up to 10%. But again, Mashpee properties, if they are unbuildable or if they're open space, they're already reduced to a minimum value to begin with, and you would have maybe a $20 effect on any of those bigger properties. So the other item up is whether or not there would be a residential exemption of up to 35%, and whether or not you would shift values and tax rates within the class of residential properties only. My board, my office, and tax collector have always asked for a large lead time, if you ever want to do that, so that we can get the proper software and do the proper investigations as to who would qualify. And you may have seen from my packet of information that the Board of Assessors in their January meeting are going to plan to reevaluate their longstanding position on residential exemptions based on the upcoming expenses and other sewer concerns in the future. So.
So are you saying that the board is thinking that this would be the way to go for the best
I don't know that they're leaning towards that, but they're certainly open to discussing it and reviewing it and seeing what effect a major shift in tax within the class of residential would cause. And then presenting that information to the selectmen at whatever appropriate time you feel necessary.
We have an exemption for seniors.
We do have an exemption for low-income seniors. We have an exemption for disabled veterans, blind, and a few other odds and ends exemptions that people can qualify for.
Yeah. Do often residents use those exemptions, or are they not used as often as you would think they might be?
The veterans ones are used significantly, obviously. We have hundreds, literally, of those. The low-income seniors, there are a few, maybe a dozen. But generally speaking, you can't afford to live on Cape Cod if you have that kind of income stream.
Right.
Even to buy a house would not be possible, so.
Right. But I'm guessing that many of the seniors own their properties at this time.
They do. They seem to, yes.
John?
Just to sum it up, so you're suggesting with a factor of 1, the present tax rate is $8.91, and you're proposing $8.03, which is a decrease of 88 cents, the way per thousand.
Yeah, I'm not proposing the 891. That is what last year's tax rate was. And the math works out with the valuation increases across the board to draw in the budget as voted to bring the levy to a point where it's $8.03 per thousand.
Right. Yeah, I was just summarizing what you were proposing.
That would be, and I recommend a factor of 1 for all classes of property with no small business exemption and no discount for open space.
Correct. And that suggestion of just keeping it, all tax rates the same, I did some homework, and 10 out of 10 towns on Cape have the same factor of 1 across all
Across the board.
entities. So
There are, I believe, 15, maybe 16 towns and cities in the Commonwealth that actually have a residential exemption out of the 362, I want to say.
not on Cape.
Not on Cape Cod.
No, there's only a couple on Cape Cod.
Yeah, only a couple.
Well, none of them have a lower rate for
A
residential.
lower tax rate?
Well, they have a mixed tax rate,
Oh, I see, yep.
but no town on Cape Cod has a lower tax rate for residential.
Right, as far as I know at this point.
They're lower for,
That's not technically accurate. Several towns on the Cape have a residential exemption, which, while it doesn't give them a lower tax rate, it gives them a lower tax bill if they qualify for the exemption.
well, yeah, but that's
As a factor,
exemptions, that's different.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you vote the residential exemption, what that does is it says it shifts the values within the class of properties, residential, from the year-rounders to vacant land and part-time residents, which is about 50-50 split. it raises the tax rate within that class. So you might have 803 for commercial properties, but you're gonna have another dollar, say at 20%,
On the
for
residential.
residential.
Yeah.
You're making it a lot more complex to try to figure out
Yeah.
exactly what.
But do you not, Jason, and you normally provide that analysis and it's missing from this package, do you not have at least half the full-time resident taxpayers who qualify having a higher tax rate but a lower tax bill if you have a residential exemption?
Those who qualify, yes, until you hit the break-even point, which is right around $850,000 in assessed value this year.
Right. So it's another way to get at, the people, Tom, you were talking about, seniors who might have, lower, below the median property values and the like. It's another way to provide them meaningful tax relief.
Yes.
I just would caution everybody, don't fixate on the rate, fixate on the bill.
Right.
Doesn't matter what the rate is by itself if values are higher, which they are in this instance. So the rate's going down, but everybody's tax bills are going up as a result.
Right.
So, did you provide an analysis to the assessors of where those breakpoints were and how many properties would benefit from a residential exemption this year, or did they not have that data?
They are aware of the last one I did, what the board had requested some months ago based on the previous year's rates. I have not done that comprehensive analysis this year. That takes a long time to do, and it hadn't been requested at this point. Based on the fact the tax rate was going down, it seemed that if you look at the average tax bill that I have broken out for you on your chart from last year to this year, you're going to see that the increase is $130 some overall as a general rate. So, and with Prop 2.5, you almost always pay at least $100 to $200 more on average for your tax bill. It's pretty
Can I
standard.
ask a question? Can I ask one more question, Carol?
Go ahead.
Point every year where we're told we need a year's lead time to consider residential exemption, so we can't do it for the year we're being asked to consider, and then it goes away, and then we repeat the cycle 8 times in my experience with this board. When you say that your assessing board's going to reconsider it, what does that mean, and how does that play into the decision-making process that this board confronts, and is it going to result in us having a real decision to make next year, or are we going to kind of continue to do the shadow dance that there's something out there that offers property tax relief to the people who need it most in town, the year-round residents with below median value properties, or are we going to continue this?
Well, my understanding is that this select board will perhaps maybe late March, early April, take this under their own review again in order to put anything on the May town meeting budget items that would cover the cost of any software or other expenses that would be incurred. At that time, that would also give the assessors plenty of time to do the mailings and pre-qualify as many people as possible to get accurate numbers for next year. Then you could, or could not, pull the trigger easily at the next meeting with no, let's say, ill effects, but with no delay of tax bill mailings and other issues.
Does that satisfy
Do you anticipate a recommendation or some input from the assessors to inform the Board of Selectmen if we were to consider this for Springtown meeting action to fund the necessary software, or do you think the decision we're just going to be left to on our own?
Well, the feeling I get from the board is that they are open to that eventuality next year. And they'd like to study the numbers a little more in depth and see what it's going to take. Next fiscal year is a audit year for the department, from the Department of Revenue. But that's going to happen no matter what. So the Board of Assessors does want to take a look at it and be open to it, as opposed to just being monolithic. No, this is our answer every single year. They are willing to re-examine the arguments on both sides.
Yeah,
I think along with where Andrew's going, I think it's going to become a necessity. I think that a lot of people, while their house is paid off, they're there trying to pay the bills and still stay in their house. I think that's their goal. And I don't know that the exemption really benefits them at all as it stands right now. And I think we need to look at that. And I agree with what Andrew is presenting. I think we've, like the word that was phrased that was used, kicking this down the road, and I feel like that's what's really happening. We're not making any move on it, and I think that the population is getting older in this community.
Okay. There are different ways you could approach it next year. Oak Bluffs just enacted it recently, but I believe they started with something like 4% as opposed to 35%. So it's a very gentle introduction, if you will, so it
And
doesn't
can you
cause
do
a
that?
shock on either side.
Can you do that?
0 to 35% is what's allowed to be voted by the Board of Select,
Okay.
or Select Board.
So you can start it off at a percentage and then increase it
Yes.
as you go?
As a matter of fact, Tisbury, I believe, are doing the exact opposite. They found it wasn't beneficial after having it for several years, and the Select Board was reducing it every year, trying to get it to as close to 0 as to take it off the table. It's going to depend on each town's individual.
And why
makeup.
would they do that?
They found it wasn't having the benefit that it was first expected, which is the same reason that this originally exemption started out at 20% max. And then when towns did that for a few years, it kind of lost its oomph. So they raised it to 25, then 30, and now 35%
Yeah.
shift.
Okay.
Wellfleet just went up.
Did it?
They went up, and their Board of Selectmen exceeded the recommendation of their assessing department and pushed it higher up to a greater percentage this year.
Okay.
David, any questions?
For me, my concerns, in the spirit of preserving community character and things of that nature, providing some sort of relief to the low and moderate income people. If it's within our means to do so, then, I want to support that. The other thing is, entertaining the small business exemption. Again, I'm all for mom and pops. I'd like to try to if we can entertain that option. I think it would promote more mom and pop businesses and rather than big business, commercial, corporate entities
Sure.
coming into town, in the spirit of maintaining the community character.
Right. I can speak to the small business exemption specifically. There is an issue with that exemption in that the property value itself may not exceed $1 million. There are very few places that are owner-occupied under $1 million with fewer than 11 employees.
So that's who would benefit.
So that's why it benefits so few people, and you shift a lot of money within the residential or commercial class to benefit a few people. So it's certainly something to discuss, but it's one of those things that it was great maybe when it came out in the 80s, but now it needs readdressing by this legislature.
Also, along Andrew's lines, if we can provide relief in the tax bills, then, I think there's certainty with some of the funding, of the wastewater infrastructure build-out that's going to increase taxes. We're going to have to. So if we can provide them relief, before that happens, then, it won't hurt so much. So, that's why I'm kind of leaning towards going down that road and exploring the options. I would appreciate to have the information, the Board of Assessors recommendations and hear the results of their meeting.
Sure.
Before making any decision at this table. And I found a lot of value in the spreadsheet that you provided last year that showed the difference in rates and how they would affect the bottom line.
Sure, I can do a breakdown again like that in multiple different percentages. And now that I have new numbers, I couldn't have given you anything even before this date, because those numbers aren't not changed yet. So they're all proposed at this stage. But after the assessors meeting in January, I'd be happy to provide this board with whatever they'd like. And again, as I said, if you get something on the Maytown meeting, maybe tell my office it's go time, just to give you the option next year.
Sure.
You know, in April, late March, something like that. That would give us the,
I think what you're hearing, Jason, is that there's sort of a shifting degree of sentiment that at least, while not prepared to make the jump, that this shouldn't just be an automatic exercise anymore. And I think, you know, we really want to, I'm hearing from a majority of the board that we really want to be in a position to give this more serious consideration than we're able to this year as we move into next year. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I think, you know, with costs being what they are and people under the pressure that they're under, you know, and everybody trying to do everything they possibly can to make this as affordable a community for the year-round community, this is about the only real tool that we as a board have, and I think you're hearing a desire to really kick the tires on it more thoroughly than we've been able to do in prior years. And I think it would be good to convey that back to your board.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Jason, is there a way to extrapolate, I know you said it's a lot of work to create that list.
it is, but I can do it.
Is there a way to extrapolate the information from the last list you provided? That was what, 2020?
Yeah, there are some some formulas in that spreadsheet, which there actually are written right on there, that you could change, use the same category, because the property, you know, broken down by $100,000 doesn't really change that much, right? Don't shift that much. So just take the new tax rate, say 803, multiply that out on those, on that spreadsheet, and then insert whatever the shift. And the problem with the shift, right, when I'm giving you examples, is basically I'm gonna guess, all right, well, here's maximum at 35%, here's a 20% example, because the numbers will shift, obviously, based on the percentage the selectmen or select board would like to use.
Okay.
Because the reason I ask is, I think it would be helpful to the Board of Assessors in their January meeting to have that information before them when they make those decisions, and so that they have everything in front of them. And, you know, like I said, I saw value in having it. It provided clarity. So if there's a way to get them that, then I think it would be helpful.
Well, I have a month, I can get that worked up for them, for their meeting.
Good.
Appreciate that.
Is everybody okay? All right. Somebody want to make a motion? Andrew?
Sure, okay, I'll read the motion. Move the town of Mashpee adopt a tax rate factor of 1 for all classes of property with no discount for open space, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption.
Do I roll call, Tom?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Communications and correspondence. I have a couple of letters that if anybody wants a copy of. One is from Buff and Sarah Chase, and then there's one from Karen Faulkner. Okay, new business, no additional topics. Liaison reports. Tom?
I'll let you hop over me. I'm just going to think about
Okay.
this for a minute.
John?
Good.
You're good? David?
I wasn't in attendance at the last meeting. I heard the feedback on the town seal was positive.
Oh, yes, it was.
Folks really appreciate it. I just wanted to say that, you know, the committee that was put together made it very painless to go through the process. Pierce Cote was very professional to work with, and they made, you know, they did a great job in taking the advice of the committee and the direction, and we were all very happy with the end result. I hope that the town likes it and adopts it. It's something that we are proud of, and it was an honor to be a part of that process.
Very good. Everybody seemed to
Thank you.
embrace it, which is great.
I'm glad.
Carol?
Yes.
I just realized we had a little procedural error. I should have made a motion to close the public hearing.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. And then I defer, because it is a taxation matter,
Yes.
so we're completely above reproach, I'd like to make a new motion that the town of Mashpee adopt a tax factor of 1, all classes of property with no discount for open space, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption.
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. Tom?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Yes.
Good catch, Andrew.
Yes, good
I
catch.
did have one update.
Somebody texted me. I would be lying if I said I caught it. I got alerted.
Go ahead.
Just a quick update, as far as the schools, I don't know if you're aware, but, Mark Belstracci, high school principal, is actually leaving for an assistant superintendent position in
For Haven.
Fairhaven, correct. So, I think his last day is November, or his last, I believe so, just as an FYI.
I'd recommend the Board of Selectmen send a letter of appreciation to him
Yeah.
for his years of service
Sure.
and dedication.
Great idea.
I'll have my position at the Assembly of Delegates at the county level. Before us, we have come to be supportive of the continuation of the police academy run on Cape Cod, on the base. And that's going to include, they need additional funds overall. And I don't know what the board stands or anybody else stands on this. I think it's, from what I've seen and what I've heard presented to us, is that it's a necessity that the Cape towns are all participating in the police academy, and some of the other Upper Cape towns are using the facility as well. There was a shortage of funds somewhere along the line, and the county commissioners allowed it to continue by funding the dollars to keep it going, which had to be done. I believe it did. It may not have been the proper channels, and we're looking into that now. But I'm not sure that I would agree that we should fund it completely on the towns all chipping in. I think there should be some state participation that would provide funding to allow this academy to exist and run it with joint additional funds from each of the towns, plus the state chipping in a sizable amount of money. And I don't know where everybody else stands on this, but I'd like to reach out to you and think about this and take a look at it and let me know what your feelings are. And I'll bring those thoughts to the assembly and let them know how my board feels. Because I think it's important. I think there's a necessity for the training for the new police officers coming on board, and what it does is it saves them in the money for transportation and paying for rooms where they might have been off Cape staying there. So there's somewhat of an offset there. How much of it is an offset, I'm not quite certain. But it's something that makes it worthwhile to me, and when I looked at all the numbers overall. And like I said, I think it's too late in the game to pull the plug on the funding for this, as far as I'm concerned. I think we ought to be looking for state funds to really support this police academy. But I'd love to hear your input on that. If you take a look at it and let me know, I'd appreciate it.
Should we just, Madam Chair, should we put something like that on the agenda for the next meeting get some more facts about what you're looking for?
Take a look at the assembly. You can see what's going on. It's a worthwhile process, and I think it should continue at least this coming year, the next academy, or the next couple. But
The towns participate anyway.
yes, they all do.
Right, okay.
Right, but it's gone up. The cost of running the academy has gone up.
Okay.
Is there a state mechanism for funding
There
municipal
isn't.
academies?
Well, I don't know how much we get, if any, but all I know is that the original amount that was proposed was
Insufficient.
much less than what we actually need.
Do you
So,
know how many are there other regional academies across the Commonwealth?
I don't know if they're the regional. I think they're run by the state. There may be a couple of regional, but most of them are run by the state. Rodney, yeah. Yeah, he was the perfect guy. He usually has more answers probably than I do, still learning.
The majority of the academies are overseen by the Municipal Police Training Committee. There is an oversight that has now been modified a little bit through the police reform bill, but essentially the closest academy that we had available for us was Plymouth, and generally that was full. So we found ourselves sometimes having to send a recruit to someplace like Springfield.
Oh, wow.
So that becomes extremely costly. So the retired chief from Falmouth and the retired executive director of the Chiefs Association, Wayne Sampson, approached the Municipal Training Committee with the proposal of running an academy in Cape, or on Cape Cod, I should say. And the question was, where was the location going to be? Joint base was considered a feasible option, and there was a site that was selected and mutually found to be acceptable to all parties. And when they were working out the financial aspect to this, I believe, and Selectman O'Hara can correct me if I'm wrong, initially this was started with some seed money through various sources, and eventually it was supposed to be, I don't want to say self-sustaining, but it certainly was supposed to be close to balanced books compared to what we've all seen it end up being in the newspaper. There were a lot of complications as a result of the finances, and I think that's a story in and of itself. But in concept, the only thing that I would say is you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some deficiencies that have clearly been identified that need to be corrected, and they can never be repeated. But at the same time, do we need an academy for the purposes of training? My answer would be yes, we do. Law enforcement today more than ever needs progressive training, and it needs to be updated, and it needs to be state-of-the-art. And the last thing we want to do is forego training in a day when we need it more than ever. So the only thing I would say is, and this mask is going to get me coughing here. The only thing that I would say is we need to stay focused on the priorities, find a way to fund it, and work collaboratively together to resolve all of the issues. I'm going to go get some water.
Yeah. That's basically, I agree exactly 100% with that. It's too valuable of a resource at this stage of the
So
game.
how do they set it up? Do we pay per officer that we send?
Yes.
That's how it is
Yes.
set up? So
Yes.
they're going to have to go up
Yes.
on the
And
cost?
they put, yes, it'll be a cost, and that's why I'm hoping that they reach out to I think the state should absorb some of these costs and make the academy more available to other towns as well. So, and I think that's what, it stirred up the assembly a little bit, and, you know, a lot of people were upset with the overage and how it was handled, and, but I think, I agree that it's more important that we keep the academy, in my opinion, that we keep the academy functioning and move forward. We just need to find a more accurate cost of what this is worth, and I think we need to get the state to participate even more heavily.
I think, if I could, Madam Chair, I think between the state, the county, whatever their contributions may be, I think in the end there has to be some assessment to the towns relative to the number of recruits that are participating.
Right,
And if the towns have to pay more,
right.
then I can't speak for the 14 other towns, but from my perspective, I'd rather pay a little bit more for the assessment and send the recruit to Joint Base Cape Cod
Than
than
off-Cape.
compared to sending them somewhere else where we have to put up the room and board.
Sure.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I
state,
think we
state
should
does
put this on for
contribute.
next week and get into the more details. We're drifting into policy discussion that we haven't really
Yeah.
gotten prepped for.
That's fine. I just want to reach
No,
out to you,
that's fine.
to the board, just to.
No, I appreciate the offer, Tom. I think it's
Yep.
a really good issue to talk about.
It
I'd
is.
just like to be able to have some information before we get into, because we're headed towards a decision, which I would support. But I'd just like to have some information in my hand before we do it.
Sure.
Okay,
Do you have
now.
a question, David? Did you have a question?
It can wait. It was just, does the state contribute to the cost now?
Now?
Yes.
They do.
Well, in theory, they're supposed to, but whether or not they're contributing to this one, I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, that was the question.
Okay.
I know.
We'll find out.
I'll find out, right?
Okay. Town manager updates.
I don't have anything for
We do
tonight.
have the tree lighting Saturday night at the park, this Saturday night. I think it's at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Did want to mention that. And I think that's,
Santa's on his way.
Santa's coming.
Okay, make
Do I
a
have a-
motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
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 Thank you, everyone.
The Rotary
Night.
looks